Hi, how you doing? Oh, are we live?
Yeah, we are live. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Hi, I'm Tyrean Martinson, and I'm glad to be here. It's wonderful, and I'm thankful for just being invited and being able to do this. I'm gonna quickly make sure. Whoops, I am definitely muted on YouTube, so give me just a moment. Okay, so now that I've done that, hopefully this will go a little bit better. So just so you might want to know a little bit about me. I live near the Puget Sound in Washington State in the United States. In my everyday life, I am a tutor for writing and reading for teens. I have two daughters who are both in their 20s. And my cat and my dog try to make up for it by being rascally. So I don't feel the empty nest thing too much, but it's not quite the same. In my writing life, I'm kind of an eclectic writer. I write speculative fiction, but I also kind of dip into historical and contemporary. I've written a few really tiny scripts. I've written short stories. I've written poetry. I've tried a lot of different things. So since childhood, my imagination has been swept away by fairy tales, science fiction, and tales of overcoming the odds. So those are the kind of stories I like to read, and they're the kind of stories I like to write. So my first publication was a poem about my muse, when I was in college, and that landed in my college newspaper. Years ago, I had my first paid short story publication when a story about a young woman who can bring magical creatures to life by folding origami came out. It was called Dragon Fold in a magazine called Mind Flights that's unfortunately no longer around. It was a really cool magazine. My first trilogy was a sword and sorcery fantasy adventure, again, mainly for teens because I'm used to tutoring teens. I'm used to hearing what they're interested in, and I also kind of think that a lot of young adult books are very discovery based books, and I like those kinds of themes in science fiction and fantasy. So that's kind of how that ended up being. Today, though, I'll be reading from a science fiction novella called Liftoff. The story started when I asked myself a what if question about a real world place that I happen to love. So without giving too much away, I'll start the reading. Amaya didn't like matinees, but they were cheap and money was tight since her parents divorced and her mom's decision to move back to the small city of her childhood in Western Washington in the shadow of Mount Rainier. Amaya didn't like it. She missed her besties, martial arts classes, the California sun, everything about her old life. She'd lost so much. At 17, she should be getting ready for college, but all she wanted, as she sat in the dark movie theater, was a sense of home. All summer long, this old movie theater welcomed her in and wrapped her up in the smell of popcorn and licorice. Something about this place just felt right. She leaned back into the surprisingly comfortable red vinyl seat and put a hand on her necklace. 3 intertwined ovals were raised above the surface of the front, while the back held a triangle of 3 stars on one side and a shooting star on the other. Her maternal grandfather had made it. It linked her to her grandparents, to belonging somewhere. Her chest ached, thinking about their sudden deaths, her grandparents' deaths just months before her parents' divorce. Popcorn? Amaya's new friend, Jessie, held out the bucket, bringing Amaya back to the present. Amaya nodded and took a handful. She didn't eat any yet, but the strong, buttery smell held her thoughts at bay. On the other side of Jessie, Natalie offered up their shared soda. Amaya smiled, but she shook her head. Jessie and Natalie were really sweet, probably the nicest, most normal friends she'd had in her life. They talked about boys, movies, romance novels, and school. And they were open about race and ethnicity, which Amaya appreciated. She'd heard racist remarks her whole life because of her burnt sienna skin, but Jessie and Natalie accepted her. They didn't even care that she didn't know what her ethnicity was exactly. Despite her many questions, her parents didn't want her to know. It made no sense and drove her crazy. All her mom cared about was signing Amaya up for martial arts, survival skills, archery, and gymnastics. Amaya's old friends and private schools had also been vetted by her mom. Despite her mom's reasoning for her paranoia, something always felt off, like her mom was just one step beyond the normal helicopter moms. Jessie nudged her with the popcorn bucket again. At some point in her melancholy, Amaya had eaten her popcorn. She took another handful, inhaled the scent, and then forced her gaze up to the screen. In the movie, a teen girl and a teen guy stood awkwardly at a bus stop. He was offering to take her out for coffee or ice cream or anything. Amaya wanted to fall into the silly romantic vibe of it, but she was struggling to let go of everything today. She glanced over at her friends who were staring up at the screen in anticipation. Jessie and Natalie loved romance, the fervor of the uninitiated. They were so much fun that it had been easy to be drawn into light conversation and boy gossip with them, even reading romances and watching cheesy movies. They had the whole theater to themselves, and the air conditioning had been set to freezing. Shivering in summer shorts with a thin long sleeve top, Amaya curled her legs to her chest and tried again to lose herself in the movie. She hadn't seen it before, but she had checked out the book from the library. The film jerked to a sudden stop right as the guy reached for the girl's hand. Amaya sighed. Hey, we didn't even get to the first awkward kiss, Jessie groaned. Then all the little lights along the aisles winked out. The comforting neon of the exit sign disappeared, and the movie screen went dark. The theater rumbled. Earthquake, Amaya shouted, grabbing for her friends as she struggled to stand. The ground rolled and she fell forward onto the next row of seats. Jessie and Natalie screamed. Amaya fought to right herself and settled for rolling sideways off the seats. The earth had stopped moving, but Jessie kept screaming and Natalie sounded as though she was crying. It's okay, Amaya said. It stopped. Jessie, take deep breaths. We're going to be okay. Oh, okay, Jessie said in a ragged voice. A beam of light pierced the darkness, followed by a calm, deep voice. Everyone all right in here? I think so, Amaya said. Can you lead us out? The flashlight beam swept over Jessie and Natalie and landed on Amaya. She self-consciously tugged at the frayed hem of her shirt. Then she reached out to Jessie. Come on, we're getting out of here. Okay, Jessie whispered. She took Amaya's hand and rose to her feet. Natalie stood behind her and took Jessie's other hand. Amaya knew she should be prepared for anything thanks to her mom's training, but for now, holding hands felt better. At least they could anchor each other in the darkness. A flickering red light appeared in the corner by the exit door, revealing the edges of the nearest escape. It wasn't the exit sign, though, but a separate bulb encaged in metal. Amaya had seen it before, but it had never been lit. Was it their emergency backup system? The flashlight beam piercing the darkness revealed Sol Anderson. Tall, with wavy midnight hair and olive skin, Sol was already the subject of many conversations among the girls. He could even make the dorky movie theater uniform look good. He beckoned with his hand. Let's get out of here, all right? But instead of leading them toward the lobby, he led them toward the exit under the alarm light. Why this way? Maya asked, remembering how the back exit went out into a small, ugly parking lot overgrown with scrubby bushes and trash. Trust me, Sol said. His voice oozed charm. Amaya stared at him. How was he so calm after an earthquake? Suspicion had her inching closer to her friends. I don't like this, she whispered to them. Don't worry, 2 steps from here and you'll be through the back door and in the summer sunshine, Sol said. He stepped forward and threw open the exit door. Sunlight blazed into the theater. Jessie let go of Amaya's hand and bolted out the door with Natalie right behind her. Amaya didn't move. She stared at Sol, noticing the rips on the front of his uniform for the first time. What happened? Don't worry about me. Sol took his hand off the door to reach out for her. At that moment, the theater lurched to the side. As the world spun and dipped around her, Amaya stumbled sideways into Sol and clutched his arm. She trembled when the air rippled. What's happening? I'm sorry. He wrapped his other arm around her waist and held her close as the ground rocked beneath them again. What? Amaya pushed at his arm. Let go of me. I can't do that. It's not safe. He pulled her back a step, gently but firmly guiding her. Amaya resisted. She had to get to the door. She might be able to make it out. When the theater tilted and the old scrubby lot fell away, Amaya bit back a scream. The movie theater was rising off the ground. In the parking lot below, Natalie and Jesse shouted and pointed up at her. Terrified, Amaya broke free from Soul and stepped toward the opening, but Soul moved in front of her and pulled the door firmly shut, locking it in place. We can't have that door open for liftoff. As Amaya's glimpse of her friends and her world disappeared, she glared at Soul. What did he mean by liftoff? So that's the end of the reading selection I had. And I'll just take a moment and see if there's any questions or thoughts in the chat. I'm not sure if I'm seeing that correctly on my YouTube screen, but I'll see if I can figure it out. So as I said, I started with a what if question. And the what if question for me was, what if the movie theater was actually a spaceship in disguise? And what would happen if the spaceship all of a sudden needed to take off for some reason while there were people inside of it, or specifically a main character inside that theater? And then why would a theater suddenly need to take off? And especially if it's a movie theater that's actually a spaceship in disguise. And so I asked myself those questions, and that's what really started the story. It was really just me asking myself questions and thinking about what it would be like. And the idea of a movie theater spaceship came from both a visit to California. When I was in college, I saw a movie theater from the outside that kind of looked like a spaceship to me. And then I also, the movie theater in the town that I live in now, they have several theaters, and some of the theaters have these seats that shake and move during action sequences of exciting movies. Now, I've never paid the extra, I can't remember how much money it is more to sit in one of those seats, but if you sit in the same theater as some of those seats are, there's like 2 rows of them, and the rest of the seats are normal. The whole theater kind of makes this rumbling sound, and it actually causes the seats around them to move too. So all of that kind of came together for me in this idea of a movie theater spaceship. And the fun thing about that for me is that while in my fantasy trilogy I just created a world where the characters are used to living in that world. And so the fantasy world around them is their world. And so I'm describing it as I go in there, or as I'm writing the story. I'm trying not to info dump too much on readers. With Liftoff, it's a novella, so it is short, it's action-packed, but because it's sort of a portal science fiction story with the character going from normal Earth into space on a spaceship with the aliens, she is discovering things about the universe that she's never known before, and she's discovering people that she's never met before and technology she's never used before. And so I try to show that for her as a character and with the reader alongside. And so that was kind of a fun, and for me, a different way to create world building. It actually made it easier in some ways, and in other ways it made it harder, because there were moments I still wanted to stop and do like a big info dump and say, yes, now let's explain the entire political system of the universe to this teenage protagonist. But then I thought, no, I can't do that. Even I don't want to do that to my main character, much less the reader. So I didn't do that as much, or I tried not to. So as you can see, it is really short. It's a novella, and it's the second time I've written a novella. The first time I wrote a novella was for a YouTube series called Ghost Sniffers. I was actually asked by the director to take part in turning one of the episodes into a novella. So I got episode number 5. And I don't know how many people have made it through the novellas to get to episode number 5 for that novella, but it was a fun project. I got to work with the script and I got to create a B plot line that wasn't in the script. And that was a project for middle grade readers. This one is meant for teens. There are definitely action sequences in there. There's fist fighting and a space battle and a lot of the things you might expect from a science fiction action adventure novella. So thankfully, I've had some adult readers read it too, and they like it. So it isn't just a book for teens. You might enjoy it if you're an adult. And I certainly had fun writing it. I like to entertain myself when I write. So that's always a good thing, because you know that when you write a book, you're probably going to have to read it. I don't know how many times, 20, 50, 100 times by the time you get done writing your own book. Even if you only revise it 4 or 5 times, you still end up reading it more than you can imagine reading almost any other book. So anyway, so it's always good to write something that you actually like. So I don't know if I'm not looking at the chat correctly, but I don't see any questions in there at the moment. Oh, thank you, Levi. That's really kind of you. Thank you. So one of the other questions I have been asked in the past is, let's see, I think I covered that one. I have a list of questions next to me. I sometimes get asked by people who read the book why I have such an active female protagonist, and that seems kind of obvious really in today's world, but why do I think that's okay to have a female protagonist who is strong enough possibly to beat some of the men or the males in the world that she experiences? And the reason I do that is because I think that I think it's good to show those kind of possibilities. Also because I know as a young child, unfortunately, I got bullied at school, and the adults at the school were not necessarily doing their job. And so I did have to physically defend myself, and I did actually beat some of the bullies, and it was at least long enough to run away from them. So I do know that it's possible for a young woman to potentially take on somebody who's taller or bigger or, quote, stronger. So so I try to include that in some of my books, because I think it's important for readers to see possibly someone like themselves as a hero and being able to do active things. So also one of the reasons there's one of the fight sequences in here was actually inspired by a kickboxing class I was taking at the time. And I haven't been in that class in a couple of years now, but I was having a lot of fun in there. So partly inspired by life, although I don't ever write what I know like my mom wants me to. I don't know if you've ever heard that advice, write what you know. Well, I write what I know, as in I write what I know I like to imagine. And that's how that advice works out for me. So let's see. I don't know if there are actually any other questions. I'm actually trying not to watch my YouTube video because I keep seeing my hand motions and thinking, oh, wow, I didn't even know I did that, but there it is. And if you hadn't guessed, I do teach teenagers, and I do actually, when I'm teaching, I purposely throw my hands around because I'm trying to make sure that I am presenting something at least somewhat interesting to watch. And my facial expressions sometimes get kind of quiet, so that I throw my hands around. So there we have it. That's what happens when you get a little nervous and you're doing an author reading. So if you liked the reading, and if you think this book sounds like it'd be fun to read, or you know someone who might like it, it's currently on sale at Amazon for ebook. It's always on sale for in paperback and in ebook. What I mean is there's actually a sale price this week. And so if you would like to check that out, you can. And if you want to know more about me, you can go to my link, which is, I think, next to the class listing, or as part of my bio. It will take you to my link tree, which will give you options to go to my website, my Amazon page, to specific book links, and all those sorts of things. So it gives you multiple options. And one other thing, I'll be teaching a class on the 11th on 4-sentence stories. Bizarrely enough, I think I will be less nervous to teach a class than I am to read, because I'm used to teaching classes. So I'll be teaching a class on the 11th on 4-sentence stories. And it's partly to celebrate my love of writing short stories, and partly because I know as a writer, sometimes it's hard to face a blank page, and it's nice to have something to put out there. And 4 sentences is usually something we can all manage, even on a rough writing day. So if you are interested, you're welcome to come check that out. And again, if you like Liftoff, if you think you might be interested in fantasy or science fiction that's got plenty of action and adventure, and male and female protagonists that either can both pick up a laser weapon or a sword, then you can certainly check out my books. That's the kind of thing I like to write. I like to write books where there's exciting things going on and all the characters can get involved in that. Thank you for having me read. I have to admit, I am run out of my list of topics to discuss, so I'm not sure what else I can say. I guess I could say that, let's see, is there something I didn't touch on? One of the things I appreciate about this conference is that it's given us a way to see people from around the world who are writers. And while I appreciate my local writing group that I'm a part of, I really love being able to see people working at their craft from all over the world. And I'm thankful specifically to Damian Larkin, who was the first person who told me about QuaranCon, and not told me like in person, but I saw it on his one of his social media sites. And he invited authors to come and join in on the fun. And so I took that invitation and ran with it. And I'm thankful to the founders of QuaranCon, and I'm thankful for the gentleman who's my tech guy for the session, Ryan. So thank you, Ryan, and thank you, QuaranCon, for letting me be here. So thank you. And I think that's all I have. I know I should be able to fill the time more, but that's all I've got.